Good to see you all. Yeah, it's a happy bunch. Yeah, it's been a busy time, so hopefully this will be a good call. But I think, where are we? 58 so far.
Welcome, everyone. This is the third of our monthly meetings about the Green Home Grants Scheme. We have on the call today, we have Ruth Richmond from BEIS. We have Simon Ayers from Trustmark, and I believe Ruth has organised for David Messenger from ICF to talk to us as well about the app, mobile app SightLine. But we shall kick off with maybe asking Ruth if you want to give an update on where things are with the scheme and what's changed in the last 5 weeks since our last call.
Hi everybody, nice to speak to you all again. So the first thing that I was going to say is hopefully you heard on the news yesterday that we have now had confirmation that the scheme is going to be extended until March 2022. So hopefully that will provide a bit more certainty that there is this funding, it's available more for a bit longer, there'll be more ability for, there'll be more work there for installers, there'll be more ability for consumers to sign up, and hopefully that provides a bit more of the certainty that I know you've all been asking for. In terms of the actual scheme, we've got around 40,000 applications to the scheme now. I think last time we spoke was before the system had gone live, so at the time we didn't have any vouchers issued. We do now have some vouchers issued. They aren't coming out at the rate I was hoping for. I think that's a fact of where with a lot of applications having come in early, we've got a bit of a backlog, and quite a lot of them, there are issues on the applications. And obviously that's resulting in them not being able to run through the system, which there's an element of casework involved, which is slowing the voucher issue down. In particular, and there's something I thought would be particularly relevant to this audience, a lot of the quotes don't have all the information we need to be able to issue the voucher. So we sent around some guidance yesterday, and I think the scheme administrator has also sent something around to registered installers separately, with a list of what we need on quotes to be able to issue them. And we particularly wanted to draw people's attention to the template that Trustmark have produced, which will obviously make it easier to ensure that that the quotes go through the system quickly. Obviously, if there is, I don't think any of the stuff on there should be particularly difficult. I think it's the sort of thing you probably have anyway. It might be that consumers are missing it off when they're putting it onto their application. So it's just, but if you do start getting questions back from consumers about saying they've had something back from the scheme administrator saying that the quote isn't correct, we've sent around the information that you've sent around is what you need to give them so that they can upload that, and hopefully then the application will push through the system and the voucher will be issued. In terms of installers, we have around about 1,200 installers registered with Trustmark for the measures within the scheme. And the cert bodies tell us they've got a pipeline of installers coming through the certification process as well. There is a gap between that and the number of installers that are registered on the scheme, and we're working on reducing that gap. For example, some of you may have been contacted by one of our contractors, a different one to the scheme administrator, who was phoning up installers who were registered with Trustmark but not with us, to find out whether that was because they didn't want to be involved in the scheme or whether that was because they just hadn't realised they needed to sign up. And we've seen quite a lot more applications since that work finished, so we're hoping that more and more people are aware and are signing up to the scheme now. Personally, I think we still need more installers on the scheme. I think there's a real demand for work out there from consumers, and I'm starting a separate piece of work around trying to find out what support installers who maybe don't have the certifications yet, what we can do to try and help more installers through the certification process so that they can be there to meet the demand that the consumers have, particularly the scheme running on into next year. Now we think there's a lot more incentive for people to be involved. in terms, I think there were also some questions that came in about whether work had actually started on your voucher projects, and I have to say I don't actually know that. I think you're probably more able to tell me than that. What I do know is that we have issued vouchers, so work could have started. We haven't yet cashed any vouchers, so work hasn't completed anywhere. But I would think that over the next few weeks, more and more of that will be happening. So that was my update. I was going to hand you over to David from our scheme administrator, because I know there were a lot of questions about the app, and so he was going to demonstrate the app, so you've got a bit more, so you can see what it is that we're asking installers to do, because I understand there's been quite a lot of concern that it might be a sort of an onerous process, and it's not. So I wanted to make that clear to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, David. Yes.
All right, great. So I'm going to share my screen. Can folks see me or see the screen?
We can see your screen. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to show you the Windows operating system. This is a mobile app. It's available on Android, iOS, and Windows. So I have the Microsoft Store open here, and it is an app that you would get if you were to do the Windows version. The first thing that you would do is download it, and you would see an entry screen, login screen like this, and you would click Forgot Password, and that will prompt a screen where you enter your username, which is the email that you provided to the scheme. And you hit send, and that will get you an email with information on how to set up your password for the first time. So once you have done that, let's see if I can minimize that, you'll open up the app. First thing that you always want to do is sync the app just to make sure you have the most current form. It should do that automatically, but best practice is to always sync it. And you'll go into the forms. You will only see one form, which will be the installer form. So you'll click on that. And then just start to fill in information. So you'll want to do this at the job site. Here in the US, terminology may be slightly different, but you might have what we would call like the crew chief, the head person of the job. So they could be the one responsible for entering this information. You start with some project information, so you just tap to enter a date, and to do the location, best practice would be to do this standing outside of the house so that you had a GPS access. But it'll also work with cellular and Wi-Fi access, and you tap this button to acquire. Now you can see where I live. If anyone wants to visit, you're welcome. And you type in the voucher ID. So this is 8 characters. It is the only way to link this record to the appropriate house or property back in our database. So it is critical that you get this number right. There's no other personal identifiable information in here. We don't collect the house address. We don't collect the customer name. So it's critical that you get this voucher ID correct. And you can only do one voucher per submission. So if you were to do 2 vouchers for a home, perhaps wall insulation and loft insulation, you would need to do this twice. You have a couple of options in completing the form. You could do a pre-installation only, a post-installation only, or both. The reasons why you might want to do both is if you're going to do the job in one day, you can come in here and we'll do that just to show you quickly. So you would click both, you collect a little bit more information, which we'll do right now, about the property and the property type, a little bit more detail, and then whether a smart meter is present or not. If you're not sure, you can just click no. And then some basic information. All we're trying to do is to capture the conditions before the installation. So it's not a survey. This is not to the same level of information that you are collecting for Trustmark or MCS. You would pick the measure affiliated with the voucher that we identified. So I'm going to just show you insulation, and then you would add a measure. And most of this, as you can see, is just drop down. So I'll do suspended floor. Now, you just need to answer a couple of questions. If there's insulation present, if yes, then there'll be a couple of required fields. If no, they're not required. We want to take a couple of pictures. There's some photo guidance about what we're looking for. You'll see me because I'm using my laptop for this. Okay. Oh, the camera's being used for Zoom. I won't be able to take a picture because of Zoom. After every picture, you'll also need to geolocate it, just like what we did standing outside the property. And then if you want to take additional pictures, you can. Last thing is if there's any existing damage, we'll want to document that by taking a couple of additional photos. If not, no need to take photos. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen is the installer location. So this automatically populates, it's locked. It populates the first time you open up this form. And that's why you really need to do this on site so that you're getting the right geolocal coordinates entered. And then click done. Now I didn't take the picture, so it's telling me that I'm missing some information. I'm going to say okay. I have a red box around it because I'm missing some information, and you can see this little red icon here also indicating that I'm missing information. But that's all I needed to collect before I start work. And at this point, I can close the form, which will prompt this message, do you want to save it? And I'll say yes. And then I can close my app. I can do my project. When I'm done, I'll open up the app again. And now this time you can see in drafts, I have something. So I'll go into that. You may have a couple of different files. If you've not synced or reconciled the form, you could see a couple of different ones. So you'll want to look at the date. Again, we're not collecting identifiable information about the customer, so you'll need to look for the most current one that you were working on. And you click on it, it brings you right back to where you were. So at this point, we're done with the work. We want to document what we did. So we go back, we pick what we installed. So in this case, it was suspended floor insulation. So answer a couple of questions. What kind of insulation did we install? What was the area and the total thickness that was installed? The percent of property treated. So if we did the entire floor, we could say 100%. We're also collecting the approximate labor hours that was done for the job. This is just a statistics number. At its core, the scheme is a job creation scheme. So we want to just get a sense of the number of jobs created. Again, there's more guidance here on photos that we're looking to be taken. So you would take the photo, you would geotag that photo, and then that's it. So you would click done. Again, I didn't take the photos, so I get that warning message. You can see the measure here, again, with a little error. But assuming I had taken the pictures and geolocated everything, we go to the sign off. We just click the date and time. This number of measures recorded auto-populates. It's locked. It just shows you that you've got 2 measures in here. If you wanted to add any notes, you could do that here. You don't need to. But if there's something that you wanted to just make sure we were aware of, and then you just certify that you've done the installation at the premise and everything is true and accurate. Click yes, and then you would send it. Now in this case, it won't send because I've got errors. So I could ask it to show me where, it'll pull up to the first place. You can go back into it. Again, because I'm using my Zoom, my camera for Zoom, I can't take the picture to resolve this error, but you would be able to do that. Oops. And that's basically it. And again, if for whatever reason you needed to save it, you would just close the app, click that save button, and it would take you back to the main page. So it's really pretty straightforward. We're not asking for a lot of information. We just want to make sure that we're getting some documentation of the conditions of the project before you begin the work, as well as after you've finished. Hopefully this helps, and I will turn it back to you, Kenneth.
Thank you, David. I'm sure that was useful for everyone. There are going to be questions. I'm sure a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
But what we'll do is we'll just. I don't know if you want to say anything else, Ruth, before we get Simon to give an update, and then we'll get to the questions after that.
I was just going to emphasise, obviously, having seen the app, this isn't meant to replace any of the sort of survey work that you would do as part of your PAS, as part of your meeting standards, or particularly in 2035 with the retrofit coordinators and the retrofit and the RAs and the RCs. This is not meant to replace any of this. This tool is basically an anti-fraud tool for government. It's so that we can say that a job has been done. It logs that the job has been done, so we can be sure that we're actually paying for work that's been done. And it's really about that, it's not meant to replace any of the stuff that you would normally do within the standards. And so because I think there were quite a lot of questions that were around, how does this fit 2035 and the retrofit coordinator's role? And it's a separate thing. This is about on the day, the person there should take a picture before the job's been done and a picture after the job's been done, so we can see that there's something and that it's geolocated to the property, so we can see that a change has been made to that property. But yeah, I'm happy to pass over to Simon now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ruth. Simon, I don't know if you want to give us an update on where things are from your point of view at Trustmark.
Morning. Yeah, morning, everyone. I guess we've probably been spending most of our time at the moment working with the CBs and looking at how we can try to ease some of the pain in terms of the micro and SMEs coming through the process for PAS. So there's been quite a lot of work done. We're due to launch a free self-assessment process that also has all the documents that you need for PAS. So it will have elements around the QMS, the quality management system, the quoting, the invoicing, all those different areas that you would be expected to demonstrate to a CB. So they're all going to be, some of them already on the Trustmark site. They'll all be up on the site next week, all free. We don't charge for them. I guess the other thing, Kenneth, I think you've messaged out to anyone involved with the PASs is able to get a discount of 50% from BSI for the PASs. Yeah, so that's available as well to try to reduce some of that cost. And I guess we're really sort of picking up and supporting BEIS and ICF, yeah, in terms of some of the support around some of the questions in some of the areas. But I think we're into a lot of that nitty gritty in some of those cases now, which is for probably the T's and C's and BEIS and policy to pick up. But the general, I think, thing with the extension that I'd like to say, and I talk about it a little bit, which is if you read everything that came out yesterday, the Green Home Grant Scheme has been extended for a year, which is fantastic. Yeah, and there is a very large chunk of money that sits there. But it's probably also worth noting that within the commentary that came out, there was talk of the home upgrade grant. There is.
You're frozen up, Simon. Hello, Simon. I think we may have lost Simon from what he was going to say about the home upgrade grant. I was looking forward to hearing that.
I can maybe say something there. So I imagine Simon was making the point that there, with the home upgrade grant and with various other things that are coming in as the future goes on, and then the move in the end to regulatory approaches, we see this as being a pipeline of work into the future. I mean, this grant is now going to be 18 months, but that's not the end for us. There's going to be a lot more work that's needed on the housing stock. There'll be a variety of schemes coming in beyond that, and then going into the into the future with potentially some regulation in the future as well. So that's all things that we're working on, and we hope that over time that that will provide a bit more certainty for the future for all the installers.
Thank you very much. Since Simon isn't there, I guess we just move straight on to the first questions for you, Ruth. The first question I have is actually one from Brian Glendinning. Installers were initially told that this scheme would go live at the end of September and started to put in place resources for that date. The scheme is clearly still not live nearly 2 months later. Given that work dried up when the scheme was announced in July, will installers be compensated for the damaging cost that this announcement and delay has caused?
I would disagree that the scheme is live. Vouchers have been issued. I'd also add that actually, in terms of government funding, this has actually been an unusually compressed timeline for issue for first vouchers. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to discuss with Brian offline if he's got further points he'd like to raise with me, but I don't think there's anything more I'm going to say in an open group on that.
Is there anything you want to come back on, Brian? No, obviously not. Then I guess we'll move on to Anne Barradine. She's asking, why is the responsibility for a company's finances and administration being taken away from the company director and put in the hands of the installing workforce? Basically, looking at the app, what happens, or why can the company not sign off on work that the installer is doing before it's submitted?
I think there's perhaps, I think this might, hopefully the demo of the app has sort of helped with this one a little bit, because I don't think that, the app is not about, are you meeting the standards, are you doing the work properly? That's a different process which you should be doing in the way you would normally do it. This is about, has a job been done? So whoever needs to be at the site to be able to document that, whether that's, an individually employed installer, or if, it's kind of up to the company and how they run that particular their work. But I think I don't think there's very much more that I can say that can answer that, because I don't, obviously I can't comment on the way any particular company structures themselves and runs their operations. But I would think it would be common practice or I'd hope that it's common practice to be able to trust your installer to be able to take some photographs within an app.
Do you wish to come back on that, Anne?
Yeah, hi. My guys, my installers, subcontractors have been taking photographs for 12, 15 years. You never get the same angle. Sometimes the quality of the photographs is not good enough. If they don't take the photograph or do the survey that they are not qualified to do, we don't get paid. The agreement that you are asking us to sign is an illegal agreement. You have sent that agreement to us to sign when we do not get the full terms and conditions. You are then asking us to be complicit, forward on the workforce's email address so they can sign a contract where they don't get to see the terms and conditions.
I don't think that's completely correct, actually.
It is.
I mean, Well,
we haven't even got full access to the app, and you want us to sign an agreement. That's illegal. It's also blackmail in the fact that if we don't sign it, we don't get the work.
I don't think this is a particularly helpful discussion, because I don't think we're going to come to an agreement here. I think if you have concerns with the legality of it, I'd suggest that you write to us, and I will ask our legals. I'll ask our lawyers.
I want to come in as well. Because the work's been done by a retrofit coordinator, why did BEIS ask for a retrofit coordinator when you're asking for these photos? An absolute joke. Because a retrofit coordinator signing the job off, the people are going to be looking at these, what qualifications do they have to decide their job's done right or not? They probably don't get any qualifications. I mean, people, retrofit coordinators have spent a lot of money training. And it's a slap in the face to them. I think you've all got to go away and think about this game and sort it out, because you've made a right mess of it.
Thank you, Ian. I think your feelings are being noted. Is there anything else you want to say, Ruth, or?
I'm not going to comment on any threats of legal action that are made to me directly here. Things like that will have to go through our lawyers.
Okay, understood. There obviously is some strong feeling, and I have another question. This is from Mal Jackson. I'm afraid it's along similar lines. Can you please clarify who is actually running this scheme? Its leadership seems to be lacking, an incentive for the industry to get involved seems to be disappearing with every passing hour. Does anyone involved in the scheme recognise the need for urgency?
I think, of course, we recognise the need for urgency. That's why we've done a scheme in around about 3 months that would normally have taken about 2 years to run. So I think, I think memories are short here. You need to look at some of the previous schemes and how long they took to get government to get them off the ground. This is very quick for government timelines. I appreciate that it's not ideal, and yes, it would be ideal to have, I think the ideal thing would probably have been for it not to be announced, for us to be able to work on it, get it ready to go, and announce it. Here it is. But that's unfortunately, politicians like to stand up and announce things. So we've done what we can in the times we have. I mean, we have, in terms of the specific leadership, we've got ministers who are directly in charge of this scheme, are very interested and are very involved in the detail. I've got 2 meetings with ministers after this today, where they're really going into the detail of things and wanting to know what's going on with them. So they do, we are trying to get this right. And the reason why I'm at events like this, and is because I want to make sure that we're getting the information out to you that we have, and that we're getting the information from you as to where issues are, to try and resolve them. Unfortunately, I don't know. Maybe we are going beyond the point of that. Maybe this is, so far every question I've had has basically been a threat, and in the nicest possible way. I don't come along to meetings to be threatened. So I'm doing my best here. I'm trying to give you information. I'm trying to get information from you as to where pinch points are, to try and sort of do what we can with them. But you have to work with me as well. In the end, government doesn't have to give the industry money. We are doing this because we want to make this happen. We want to improve homes. We want to grow this industry. We want to provide economic stimulus. We want to work with you. But you have to work with us as well. It works both ways.
Thank you, Ruth. I think that's a fair enough comment. I think the feeling is just that it needs to be recognised that there are installers that have invested quite a lot of money in the scheme and not seeing any vouchers and not seeing any chance of any payback in the immediate future, and are getting rather worried for their business.
Yeah, and I do acknowledge that, and I do acknowledge that there's been a lot of investment here, and the vouchers not coming out as quickly as we hoped is not ideal. We are really working on these. I'm expecting a lot. You probably don't want to go into the details of process because it's probably boring for everyone, but there is one element of particularly the low-income vouchers that has to be batch processed, and there's a big batch due to come out fairly soon. So I think we should have a lot more coming out quickly. And I know ministers are all over this. You know, as I mentioned, I've got 2 meetings with ministers today. They are all over the depths of why we haven't issued all 40,000 vouchers that we've had applications for. So this is coming out quickly, and we are working on this, and we want to get these vouchers out. We want the work to be done. You know, we're not sitting on this for fun. Unfortunately, it just takes time to get these things out.
Okay. We'll move on slightly from that. So I have a question here from Emma Adams. And this is, how's the Green Home Grant Administrator checking the quotes regarding pricing? The guidance states the elements that can be included in the quotes, but how are they benchmarking the rates? And clearly it will depend on the access specification for the specifics for the property. And there are installers that are putting in high prices, for example, for a cavity and loft insulation. Another contractor quoted more than twice our price and hadn't even visited the property. So what checks are being done on the quotes? How's that working?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point, actually. Something we're seeing with, it's another thing that is slowing down some of the application issue, some of the voucher issue, actually. We have set some limits. They're not hard, but they're in a kind of a, if it doesn't come within these limits, it goes into a further check. And those are set based on experience of previous schemes, based on feedback we had from some trade associations and industry associations. Obviously, the nature of different houses, they'll cost different amounts. So you can't say that, you know, we can't say, oh, it must cost this, because that, we did consider whether we could set some sort of ranges, but actually we're not, you know, government doesn't want to be the price setter here. We want to say this should cost what it costs in the market, and we'll fund up to 5,000 or 10,000 depending on the consumer. What we are doing, however, is checking against what we think is in the right sort of range for an installation. And if an installation comes up higher, the scheme administrator will be contacting that consumer to find out a bit more information. And you know, if it's very, very high, I think there's an upper limit that can result in a rejection. But usually it would be a case of, you know, look into, find a bit more information, find out about, you know, what about that property might have pushed that higher than our typical quote would be. You know, potentially get a bit more information from the installer if it's not completely clear as to why, you know. So basically there's a process. It is another thing, unfortunately, that is slowing voucher application down at the moment, because we have found that quite a lot of applications have quite high quotes with them. And that may be right. It may be that they are, you know, genuinely difficult properties that are sort of more than average. We're actually doing a bit of a review of the numbers we've set as well to make sure that there aren't any issues there that we could help by moving. And I think we are actually following up with some of the organisations that we got the data from originally to check, you know, is that, you know, are you sure that's, can you give us an idea why we're coming up so differently? Is it, you know, is it to do with enabling works? What could be causing the issues here? So we are also having another review of those numbers to make sure that they are exactly right, because we're aware that at the moment that's another thing that's stopping voucher issue coming up at pace.
Do you wish to come back on that, Emma?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Ken. Thanks for explaining that, Ruth. Just sort of, you say that you'll go back to the consumer and the installer to find out more information, but all we've done is provide a quote with the meterage of the job, you know, the works that are required. There's no photographs, there's no survey notes that we've now had an opportunity to supply. Even on the app, you're literally just asking for like the technicians on site to provide photos of the install. Normally, you know, when we provide quotes for most schemes, we have to provide all the survey notes. I know that's collected all through our PAS and everything like that, but how can you and the team at ICF make that decision without all that data? The consumer's not going to know about what's required for access, especially for, you know, like cavity wall insulation or, you know, or even EWI. They're not going to understand what is required on a property. So if you're benchmarking rates, you know, it'd be quite good for us all to know where that sort of lies.
Yeah, we really did think about publishing those numbers, but the problem is that it varies a lot from property to property, doesn't it? I mean, like I've got quite a lot of students of heat installations, for example, and if you've got your if you've got a well insulated 3-bed semi, your install's gonna be a lot cheaper than if you've got a large, a large detached solid walled, kind of property. And there's and the same obviously, if you've got insulation, depending on how big the property is or how difficult the particular wall is, it's going to vary a lot more. And so it's not what we wouldn't want to say it must be this, because that would potentially push some properties out of the scheme altogether. So we prefer to say we think we've got a range that we're working to. Above that, we want to check. It's basically to check some more information. And what would usually happen in that case, I mean, and Dave might be provide a bit more info on this actually, because obviously this is in the depths of what ICF are doing, but they would obviously, I think they would be contacting the consumer to all the installers to ask for more information, ask for a bit more about why that has come in there, and and to see if we can be, just to satisfy us if it is higher, if it's high for good reason, or if it isn't high for good reason, to reject the application.
Agreed. And we're really looking for orders of magnitude off here. As Ruth said, the goal is to get work going, and so if something looks extraordinarily high, we'll make some phone calls to try and understand why and if it's justified. But we're not looking for little differences off from the mean.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Thank you, Ruth. We have a question here from, I'm just looking to see who this is from. Bear with me 1 second. So from Gary, I don't know which Gary. What happens if you're in an area that has no signal when you're trying to use the app, so you can't get geolocation and things like that?
Yeah, so it does use GPS, cellular, and Wi-Fi. It'll use all three to try and geolocate. If in the rare scenario you literally have no connection, and that's why we say when you first arrive at the property, start to fill out the app outside the house so that you have that clear sky GPS reception. But if you truly did not have any connectivity whatsoever, it will default to whatever the last known coordinates were. And so we'll be checking that, and we also know the house coordinates. And so if it's vastly different, we'll call. We'll want to understand, first of all, we'll look at a map. We'll see where that house is located. If it's in a very rural area, and yes, there really is no cell reception out there, and maybe it was unusual circumstances and there was no GPS connectivity, then that could happen. If it happens repeatedly, that's when we become concerned. Again, what we're trying to detect is fraud. We're not trying to penalize people. We're not trying to find the flaws and stop everything just because something isn't right. We're trying to make sure that no one is consistently trying to skirt the rules of the scheme and commit fraud. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you very, very much, David. I don't know if whichever Gary it was that asked the question wishes to come back on that.
It was me.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. And it's only because obviously I live in an area where it doesn't matter what type of phone you've got. I'm up the side of a mountain in Wales. You just can't get a signal. Whether it be a phone, unless you're actually in my house, but certainly around the area, it's very difficult. But he answers the question anyway, because it reverts back to the other GPS scenario, so that's okay with me. Thank you.
In that case, we have a question here. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. It's a question for you, Simon, I believe. I think you're back on now. And the question is, well, it's from Rachel Cole at Bid Connector. What is the criteria for selecting inspections for pre, mid, and post inspection? Post assessment, and who is actually doing the assessments? Can Trustmark outline what the selection process is for appointing inspection companies, and why has that not been more widely tendered?
Okay, so firstly, the criteria that's going to be used is it's risk-based. So as you are aware, we now have information from ECO. That ECO will show us the results of past 2030, 17 and 2035 areas. And let's be completely honest here, Kenneth, some of the results we see would indicate that we are not as white as white. So there are still issues that need to be picked up that we'll start doing so shortly. I think the process that we're doing is that we went out, so we went to the APMA-based organisations and we appointed an organisation to do the on-site auditing. So they are in place, ready to go, and they will be doing 10% of all the post-audit work. So we will be looking at stuff that comes in, put it through the risk engine. We will also use the high-risk areas under the scheme rules, and we will then go out and we'll also work with ICF and with BEIS to make sure that we're targeting. So the answer to the question, it did go out. It went out under the APMA areas. BEIS will be the contractor that's been appointed, and that's been announced anyway. They are all technically competent to do the work. So the question I saw earlier about how or where will we ensure people are technically competent, that's been dealt with by that organisation, and it's on a risk-based process.
Thank you. Rachel, do you wish to come back on that one?
Hi, I think my prime concern was that the announcement was made by BEIS that they were the sole provider of this service, and I wasn't aware in my discussions with
I think we're losing your sound, Rachel.
Okay, I'll try and speak up. Is that a bit better?
It's very, very weak, but yeah.
I'll lean forward.
That's better.
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of APMA members and they hadn't seen a tender, so that's why I was concerned. But my greater concern was that if 500,000 properties are going to be dealt with on this scheme, the demand for technical inspections at pre, mid and post stage is going to be quite significant. And as I understand it, it could potentially impact on us getting paid if a post-installation inspection cannot be scheduled. And my concern was, with the current demands of ECO and technical monitoring, is one organisation really going to be sufficient and have sufficient resources to make sure that those inspections can be completed in a timely fashion?
The answer to your question, Rachel, is yes. Part of the discussions on a contract was to ensure that there is capability, and we didn't actually plan for 500,000 jobs. We planned for 600,000 jobs because that was the original number, if you remember. So the target for the scheme, if you look at it now with the delivery and the sort of scope of the extension, then we're more than comfortable, and I believe BEIS are working with other organisations as well to ensure that that's all there to deliver. So yeah, I wouldn't have entered into a contract unless I know I could have met the requirement.
I'll hold you to that.
Thank you, Rachel. Right, next we have a question from Steve Hirst from the Eco Britain Group. Is there a specific criteria for new doors to fit within the voucher scheme? Do they have to be a rated door through a governing body, and the same for installation? The reason for the question is the major manufacturers of the very highly rated doors are now on long lead times up to 8 weeks. I don't know if that's a question that is best answered by you, Simon, or if that's one for Ruth.
I don't know, but I will find out.
That's exactly what I was about to say as well.
My understanding, and I'm happy for Simon and Ruth to confirm, but my understanding is any door manufactured today in the UK is acceptable.
Thank you very much. Steve, I don't know if you want to come back on that.
Yeah, it was just the lead times, because as I say, the more expensive doors, the better doors, the lead times are just exceptional. They're 6 to 8 weeks. And my concern was when we were looking at the end of March for the installs, we wouldn't actually get very many doors put in. So that was the major concern. But if you know, there's quite a few doors that are acceptable, there are other companies that have got good lead times, 2 weeks maybe.
I think, Steve, we appreciate that there's some issues with resin and all sorts of things at the moment, isn't there? And we've got obviously Brexit in January and all those other areas. So we'll take it away just so because there'd be a standard that they have to meet. Yeah. And I'll get that back to Kenneth so that everyone's aware of that. Yeah.
As long as we know what that standard is and we can get the doors in a timely manner for the client, then that's the best thing.
Yeah. Okay. We take that away as an action.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, the scheme extension would mean you're not quite so stuck but with the March deadline now, but appreciate you still want to be getting on with installations faster than as fast as you can.
The other thing is as well, what we're looking to do is obviously internal wall installation, and some of the problem that you've got with that is that we're actually going to be doing a wall and then taking part of that wall away again to put a door in or windows. So there's that issue on the secondary measure. How we kind of get around that side. We can work that. We'll just across the line.
Good to raise that. Thank you, Steve. The next question I have is again on secondary measures. It's from Paul Baxter, and he is asking, is installing a secondary measure such as a smart controller feasible under either the Eco or the Green Home Grant Scheme when the installer is not the same one doing the primary measure? Because if they're installing a secondary measure and they need to go through a second PAS 2030-2019 with retrofit coordinator, assessor, evaluator, etc., the cost will spiral significantly. So I don't know who can answer that question. Is installing a secondary measure actually such as?
The answer there, Kenneth, is that each individual will make a choice about whether they have sufficient amount of work to justify what extra costs may be required for the training to deliver. And I think, you know, the smart measures, so if we're talking about smart heating controls, smart systems, they will be a key part of the future. They're a key part of, you know, a home that's working towards net zero. So I think there's a design requirement there. I would probably just need to double check those. So once you are through the PAS, if you're extending your PAS to cover a smart measure, then that's an extension of full new PAS. So therefore it's probably more justifiable because it's a smaller cost for the addition of your PAS. If that's the question that's being asked.
I think it was more around if it's two separate installers. But let me see. Paul, do you want to expand on that? Do you want to come in?
Click your mic button, Paul. That's a
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
But basically, it's if we have a scenario whereby a client wants to have a primary measure installed, which is under past 2019, but also wants a secondary measure installed. But the first company doesn't have the PAS for the secondary measure. So therefore, they have to engage another installer who has that PAS. So the second installer that's installing the secondary measure doesn't have the PAS for the primary measure. So therefore, on something like a smart controller, is there 2 lots of PAS 2019 for each measure that the customer has to pay for? Should it not just be one PAS, or the leading company that's doing the initial primary install take charge of that under their PAS?
Yep. So I think, if I've read this right, and please tell me if I've got it wrong, Paul. So the normal scenario would be the lead company with the PAS would have, if they had scope for the primary measure, but also secondary measures.
But if they didn't?
They don't, right. Okay, so that's why if they did, you could bring in a subcontractor to work under your PAS to deliver the measure, the secondary measure. If they don't have the PAS, so they don't have that competency, then it would be a separate business that does need to have a PAS measure to deliver that smart area.
Yes, yeah. And there's my point. There's my point. If you have a smart controller which is worth, say, £200, let's say, for instance, but yet they have to engage a coordinator, an assessor, an evaluator, a designer, blah blah blah. That cost.
They probably won't need to, all right, because if there's a coordinator already in play, then the coordinator, so if we're doing it under 2030-19 and 2035, which I think is what you're saying.
Yes.
So the first company is doing the retrofit assessment, doing the design, and that will include all those elements. So
well, it can't include the smart controller because they're not PAS for it. They're not accredited for that.
No, but the retrofit coordinator under PAS 2035 will be taking the control.
Yeah, but he's not in my square. The coordinator is not my coordinator. The coordinator for the first guy is fine, but because he's not under my PAS, under core logic process, for instance,
yeah,
then I have to engage someone else.
Okay. Rather than, I'm happy to have a conversation. Should we just have a conversation offline rather than, because I can explain it to you and how the RC and all that all works together?
Perfect.
Yeah. You've got my details in my email. If you drop me an email, then I'll come back to you and we can have a conversation.
Just one last question. Will there be some sort of tolerance with the first few installs? Because I guess a lot of my installer colleagues out there, this is obviously all new to them, and it's been the communication has been a little bit sort of piecemeal, if you want a better word. Would there be some sort of tolerance for the first couple of installs so that to make sure that we get the thing right?
I think for us as Trustmark, we will look at tolerance for process. What we wouldn't do is accept poor quality, if that makes sense.
No, I mean the process. Sorry, Simon, I meant the process. Yeah.
So quality has to remain. That's what we're driving for here. That's, at the select committee yesterday, the MPs gave me an interesting set of questions about quality, because quality is what we are definitely trying to focus on. I think 100%. If it's a bit around process, then absolutely we'll do what we can to make sure that as we go through this, we get it right, because this isn't just about the Green Home Grant Scheme. This is about the next probably 20 years of delivery. Yeah, and if we get it right now, we get it right for that whole process. And there's, as you would have seen, there's billions and billions of pounds coming through. So, yeah, no, completely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Simon. Right, we have a number of questions that are coming through on quotations going into the system. I'm going to go with one from Andrei Tartza. We were bombarded by customer emails last night asking us to reissue quotes. so they comply with the requirements of the voucher scheme. Can the administrator inform customers that quotes already issued are going to be accepted as per the installer guidance? And why are the quote requirements more stringent than the requirements of trading standards? But the quote template does not comply with MCS. So there's another question asking, is it optional to use the quote template that's been provided, or do you have to use that template in order to get it through the system? So I think that's a question for you, David and Ruth.
There's a few questions there, aren't there? I think the question about the template, you don't have to use the template. By using the template, it is easier for us to process it. We don't have to, absolutely not. The information that's on there is the information that is in our guidance. Now, if we can process a quote because I do appreciate you all issue quotes ahead of all the guidance being fully available. If we can process it, the scheme administrators are doing so. In fact, they're not just automatically rejecting these, they're coming back and asking for more information so that to try and push them through the system where we can. Because we do appreciate that the guidance wasn't available at the beginning of September for this specific bit of the process. However, we do need a certain level of information to be able to approve a quote, and if it isn't on there, we need to come. We've asked consumers to go back to installers to ask for it. So that I think in one sense, I guess it shows that we are processing those applications, that you're getting the requests back for the updated quotes. That shows that we have looked at your applications. They're in the process. They're in train. Unlike they haven't just disappeared into a black hole, I suppose. So that's good. Obviously, the more information you can give us, the easier it is to process these things, which is why we're asking for the information. And now there's a question about about it not complying with MCS. Simon, I might need to refer to you on that one because because Trustmark developed the template, didn't you?
Yeah, so the template is a generic template approved by trading standards, which we've also spoken to David and his colleagues about to make sure that it fits the information. So the idea of the template is you don't have to use that template, but you should ensure you comply with the information required within the template. So if you have your own and you've got everything else and it meets all those requirements, that's fine. So it's not insisting you use it. And that's also one that we put through MCS as well. So that should be sufficient for all your quotes.
Thank you. Andrei, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, thank you, and thanks to everyone for being here, and really thanks to Ken and Gary for organizing this this outfit for us to share knowledge and really to ask questions. And thanks to Ruth and Simon and David for coming on board with us to help us with answers. Let's not forget that this was thrown over BEIS as well by politicians making high-level announcements without any backing. So I totally get it, that Ruth is in the same boat with us, really, and we try to help together. My coming back on that is thanks for the spreadsheet that was sent by Trustmark. And yeah, it takes me back to my early school years when I didn't have much knowledge of business, but we've invested in a CRM and had that audited by trading standards. Specifically, the point about splitting labor costs and materials costs, trading standards have not requested us to provide that information. Our CRM is not set up to provide that information. And now you are asking for that. My question is, what is the point of asking for that information other than making life really difficult for everyone? Because if I understand that question, then I can go back to our developers and invest in changing our CRM if that makes, if that makes a difference, and then go again and approve it with trading standards. It's a bit too much difficulty, for installers, and it's really great to see that you want to bring more installers on board. But I think the main concern should be at the moment, how do you make sure the ones that are involved in the scheme remain alive, remain sane, and with enough energy to work with the scheme so we can actually do the installation. There's more things I wanted to say about the app as well, because I don't see how this compliant with GDPR, but I don't know if GDPR, maybe we get exempt for that because it's an American app. I don't know. So a few things for the forum to discuss. So thank you very much to everyone. And again, a big thank you to Gary, Ken, Ruth, Simon, David, and everyone in the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. Do you want to come back on that, Ruth or Simon or David?
I think in terms of the policy stuff, I can't help with Andrei on those. I think on the sanity one either, no, I think we're all struggling with that at the moment as well. So, but I think in terms of the quote we have, we use a primary authority. So we ensure that anything we produce is a nationally accepted document by trading standards. So that's the idea of us going through that route. We worked with BEIS and with ICF to create the document that's suitable for the scheme. So I think that the breakdown would be more a policy or a ICF requirement. Ruth, is that the breakdown in the quotes for labour and materials?
I was just checking whether we actually whether that's in the guidance actually. I'm not 100% sure it is actually. David, can you confirm what exactly we say in the guide on that?
Yeah, I do believe we ask for labor and materials separate, and it just helps us understand where the cost is coming from.
So in effect, if it wasn't provided, we'd be in a situation where where we might have to then go back and seek that advice because we would to explain, for example, a quote that had come in high or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm not sure that really gives a clarity to why the information's asked for. So just to try and get this for my own sanity, can I just confirm the reason you're asking for the breakdown is so that when the quotations come through and you're doing the fraud checks, you can assess whether the quote is being perhaps inflated on material costs or the labour costs.
Let me take this one away because I wasn't involved in the development of this section of the policy. So let me take this one away and check exactly why we need that information and what the rationale for it, the full rationale for it was. That's where I can see we would use it, but there may be other reasons, and I don't want to. And also to see whether there is what room for manoeuvre there is around this and how. Let me come back to you on that one.
The only other reason I could think of for that might be VAT. But I will wait for your response there.
Can I make a suggestion, Ken?
Yeah, please.
Can I make a suggestion, both to David and Ruth? Would it be possible that the two are combined, and then if there is a problem with the overinflation of the cost, you can go back to the installer for them to explain the separate issues rather than ask everybody, because obviously, hopefully there won't be very many overinflated costs. And therefore, if the costs are acceptable under one cost, then you go back to the installer if it's too high and get them to explain, right, okay, so what are you putting for materials? What are you putting for labour costs? If the cost is acceptable, you're making it easier for all installers to then put in the cost. If it's within your pricing bracket, which you've got, and it is acceptable, then surely this makes life easier. We can get more vouchers done. We can help more people. It just, what I'm hearing a lot of here is little tiny creases in a sheet. If we can iron a few of these out, it will just make it a lot easier. I prefer to come up with solutions rather than problems. Is it possible that we can combine these two, and then if there's a problem with the costing, go back to the installer and address the situation?
So this is exactly why I want to take this away, because I think there might be something we can do here, but I don't want to commit to that till I can be sure of what the rationale behind all this was. One of the things we do need in the quotes is for it to be apparent what's the sort of, what's the actual measure that we're paying for and what's enabling works. But whether within that we need it broken down quite to that level, let me come back to you on that.
Thank you, Ruth. The problem with that is if the job takes less than what it is, the customer will come and say, oh, you spent not enough time on the job, so I'm going to pay you half. Or if it takes longer, then the customer will go, oh, are you going to charge me more? I'm pulling out and get out of my house. Yeah, these kinds of things that be really good to look at. So thank you, Ruth.
And I'll as soon as I get off this call, I'll go and I'll check that with the right people and come and so I can get back to you quickly on that. So I'm aware that with consumers waiting for.
Yeah, in regards to the GDPR, as you saw, we're not collecting any personal identifiable information. So with the app, it's go ahead, Andrei.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's true. We haven't seen enough of that. But if we get to past 2035 and there's data on disabilities of customers, I don't want the installer to see what disability Mrs. Smith has or her daughter. And these are the concerns. With the app, another concern is the installer has to set everything up on the job and they'll make mistakes. And there's no way for us in the office to check the quality of the data that's being submitted through the app. And that will result in delays and rework for you, rework for us, delays, more frustration. I really think, and you may have that already, but it would be good to have a couple of installers maybe on board with you, just to check things like the Excel spreadsheet from Trustmark and the app and other things before you put too much effort in that. And we are all in this together, and to work together is not, pointing fingers and you did it wrong, we did it wrong. Let's work together, let's.
Understood. And I do think as you start to use the app, you'll see that this is not as bad as you're envisioning.
Having just looked at it, so I woke up today really early to go on a job which we had the voucher for to start it. I took photos with timestamp just to prove that it hasn't got insulation on it. And now that I've seen the app, I've realized I've got to go back there, travel 1 hour myself to go with the app and take photos, because there's no ways, you don't have a separation of roles. You don't have a role for an installer and a role for the office. And that's what we'd like to see. I think that would help everyone.
Yeah, so when I did the demo, I showed you the option for both. If you're gonna be there in one day and do the pre and the post. So for what you just described, you can separate it out. If you're going to go yourself to the job site initially before the work begins and you want to document it, you can do the pre and you can submit that. And then whoever you entrust to sign off on the work could document the post and submit that separately.
Is there a way to log on for two different people to log on to the same job? Because you couldn't find a way to do that.
So each person has their own app on their own device, and they would either submit a pre, a post, or both. So you can't, if you chose the option to do both and ended up only just doing the pre and wanted somebody else to do the post, then it's not set up for that. You can't share the data across the apps. But
how long do you think that's to happen?
No, but what I'm saying is you can, today, you can have two different people on their own devices. One does a pre, one does a post. So the pre does not need to be shared with the person doing the post, and vice versa. So you can completely separate the pre and the post on two different devices.
That's great to hear. I don't think that solves the problem with it, but you know, let's see how it goes. I think it needs changes. You know, the main thing, please, if you can take that on board from us, we need one level for the office and one level for the installer, please.
Yeah,
because we want to check the quality of the submissions.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so for that, again, the intention of the app is it's to be used in the field to document the condition before and after the work. This is not a quality check. That's what Trustmark and MCS have put in place. This is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wasn't talking about the quality of the work. I was talking about the quality of the photos and the submissions. Because if you have a guy on site with a drill in one hand and a screwdriver in the other hand, it's likely that when they input the voucher number, it will be wrong. When they take the photo, it will not be the right angle. It will not be the right, the light won't be right. We want to check the quality of the photos to make sure that what you get is fine and it don't get sent back to us or denied payment, which hopefully we'll see tolerance from the administrator.
Yeah, no, and I heard Ann say that earlier, and we have experienced that as well. Our approach is, again, not to be punitive. We're not looking for reasons to flaw these. You know, we look, if we see something that isn't exactly what we're asking for, we're going to call you up and we're going to let you know and ask that you talk with your crew. But we're not going to just flaw something because they took a bad picture.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Thank you, David. Moving on. I don't know how you are for time, Ruth, Simon, David.
I'm afraid I've got 8 minutes.
That's all I've got as well, Kenneth. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was aware. We have had an exceptionally large number of questions. We were never going to get through them all. I think by my reckoning, we're now on 89 questions. So that's, yeah, we're not going to get through them all. I will, if it's okay with you guys, put together a list of questions and send them over for follow-up. It was appreciated very much, the responses last time, Ruth. And thank you for your time as well, David. Thank you for your time today, Simon. Gary, you wanted to wrap up. There's one thing I'm just going to say, because there's been a number of messages on the chat session. Keith Hanger has been asking about Park Home's industry position. I don't think we've got time to go into in detail, Keith, but I think perhaps if there's appetite from our members and people on the call, we'll maybe look at doing a park home specific Q&A, because I think there's a lot of questions about park homes that people have that we could do with getting some answers on. If anyone is interested in participating in that, please let us know. Gary, do you wish to say a few words to wrap up?
Okay. I think with the app, just looking at it sensibly, a suggestion for myself would be people out on the job are out on the job. They're not administrators. We have a lot of people that are fantastic with their hands and fantastic at doing what they've been doing for many, many years. We're now asking them to think about other things. And for me, common sense says, if you could take photographs, which would be date stamped, time stamped, and you could send them into the office and allow people that understand what they're looking for, making sure that what they've got is correct. You know, we've already heard that there's been problems with the applications. Let's not make it worse. Let's try and help the process be smoother. And if photographs could be sent back into the office and then uploaded onto the app by people in the office, that administrators understand and that organise everything, life would be so much easier for the installer to actually get on with the job that they understand and are very competent at. For the sake of a photograph and a GPS, if you've got a property address and you've got a house number, a postcode and whatever, and you take a photograph that's date stamped and everything, surely it's easy to check that is in fact the address that you've photographed, to make that life easier. It's just a suggestion. Overall, we know there's loads and loads of questions. It's fantastic that, you know, what we've pushed for as far as the extension is concerned has been addressed. And I applaud the efforts of everybody that has pushed to get what was an impossible situation remedied. So fantastic, well done, BEIS. You know, we got an extra 12 months. There has been a few questions on the extra £1 billion. Is that an extra £1 billion, or is it £1 billion that's sort of absorbed within what's already been given out? And that £1 billion, can someone explain, not on now, but what that's made up of, what parties to the 5,000 vouchers, 10,000 vouchers, council, whatever. It's been a bit of a difficult time over the last few weeks for a lot of people, and a lot of companies are on the line, and a lot of companies are on thin ice. We've put a survey out, and you know, many thanks to all those that have completed the survey. It's really shown up how COVID, the Green Homes voucher, how this has all affected our industry. We will put the findings of this out to everybody, part of which, of course, was regarding the job scheme. There are a few questions in there, and we will hopefully be becoming a portal for the job situation, the Kickstart scheme, and we'll give you further information. Ken, what date did we say we wanted to do the December one on? 12th, was it?
The 10th.
10th. Right, so 10th of December, which is a Thursday, 11 o'clock. One thing I would say, this particular Zoom call was full quite quickly, and I've unfortunately had to turn a few people away. we will be giving preference to association members. And therefore, if we've got a situation where we are full with the association members, I do apologise. They've become more and more popular as we've gone along. I thank everybody for being part of this. Thanks so much, David, for coming across from Maryland. You know, I hope the weather over there is a bit better than it is sitting outside my window. But thank you so much for coming on and you know, sharing your knowledge. Hopefully you've got a few things that you can go away and have a chat about. Maybe there are a few little creases that we could iron out to make life a lot easier for the installers. At the end of the day, it's all about getting the job done with the right quality by the right people to help move this industry forward. Yes. But of course, the main thing for me is the customer. Correct. It's all about the customer. As long as the customer. Sorry, who?
Can I come in, Gary? It's Ian. Can we arrange a park home one for next week? I know it's short notice, but park home is causing a lot of problems and issues, and the quicker we can have a Zoom call to discuss and get things thrashed out, a lot better for everybody, because nobody's moving the goalposts on it. It's got to be ironed out, and the sooner it's done, the better. Then everybody knows what they're doing. Because I actually think BEIS are holding back home vouchers. I'll be honest in that. Thank you.
Okay, look, at the end of the day, we know there is a problem, or certainly some issues with park homes. It is a point that we do need to thrash out. More of a, how do we get it to work, rather than it can't work. It has to work, simple as that. You know, people have invested a lot of time and money getting this to where it needs to get to, and there are tens of thousands of people living in disgusting conditions in park homes. We need to help these people, and we need to help these people before the winter gets here. This is so important, but I'm not going to go down that road. Again, the answer, Ian, is yes. We'll get involved with everybody and see what we can do to make it happen. I would suggest we try and aim for next Thursday at 11 o'clock, because we like to do all of these on Thursdays, 11 o'clock, so everybody understands their diary. All the Zoom calls, we want to try and do the same.
A lot will depend on who else we have on that call, though.
Yeah. It needs to be organised so that we have a proper agenda of what we're trying to achieve here. Because at the end of the day, you know, I want to get this moving. You know, we can't change schemes halfway through, but what we've got to do is make sure that the actual scheme and the vouchers get out and people get the correct help. But I think the key word there is the correct help. Okay, thank you so much, Simon, for coming on the call. Thank you so much, Ruth. Difficult start, but I think things got better as we went along. I think when there are challenges, people get emotional. You know, we see the opportunity here. Now it's a case of everybody's itching for it to get going so that they can use the energy, as Andrei said, to actually put it into what we all want to do here. So thanks very much for your time, folks. If anybody's got any specific questions, Gary at energyefficiency.association.co.uk. As Ken said, we'll try and get the questions across to Ruth, and obviously Simon and David, get the answers back as soon as we can. These things do take time, but you know, one thing we're learning here is patience. I know we all haven't got a huge amount of it. I'll speak to you all, no doubt, in the meantime, but we'll resume the next Zoom call on the 10th of December. Please email me if you want to come on it, because it's going to fill up very, very quickly and we have limited numbers. Thanks so much for your time. I'm going to do the usual, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. Take care.